Rolling budget is an interesting approach to budgeting. Rolling budgeting is generally used for service-based organizations only because, as it's creating a budget for the coming 12 months, and at the end of each month, we go through variance analysis. What was the budget? What were the actuals? What are the differences? We divide those variances into ones that are material and ones that are not. So let me explain. Every organization has to determine for themselves how much variation is normal in business that doesn't really impact our achieving our goals. Let's say it's 3%, 5%. We feel that any variation that is plus or minus 5% or less is normal business and is not going to impact our achieving our goals. So we effectively ignore those. Any variance that is greater than 5% positive or 5% negative in this case, those are the ones that we identify, decide what actions are going to be taken, by whom, with what resources, by when, how do we measure it. That's taking the variance analysis approach in a positive way to make the adjustments we need to get back on track. So in our rolling budget, we created a 12-month budget. At the end of 12 months, we do a variance analysis. What are the variations that are less than our acceptable plus and minus? We ignore. What are the ones that are greater than? What actions are we going to take? We make these adjustments. We re-budget for the next 12 months. We do that every single month. In this case, there is no end to the budget because every month when we do our analysis, we're budgeting for the next 12 months. This is not the type of budget that most product organizations can use. A rolling budget is most frequently used with sales organizations where they have specific revenue goals. They're producing nothing, they're warehousing nothing, they are revenue generators with very little, if any, fixed cost. All costs are variable, therefore all costs are manageable. That's the real key to rolling budgets. Which brings us to activity-based budgeting. Activity-based budgeting is the most interesting, most challenging, most rewarding, most complicated, most expensive, least used form of budgeting in the world. Okay, that probably scared you. Activity-based budgeting requires us to take a very different approach to budgeting. Activity-based budgeting says there are no discretionary costs. There are no indirect costs. Every cost we have can be allocated to what we sell one way or the other. So it requires us to identify every activity required to produce the product or services that we sell, whether that's ordering, managing, warehousing, moving, inspecting. Every single activity is identified and laid out on a large spreadsheet. Then every single activity is quantified. In other words, what does it cost to do X? So if we're talking about ordering material, what does it cost to place an order? And I'll share with you, I'm quite surprised at the number of organizations in a variety of industries of very large size don't actually know what it costs them to place an order. That's one of those indirect costs that is critical to know. A number of years ago, IBM felt that there was just some unnecessary waste, which is somewhat redundant. And they were told internally to do an analysis. And once they did an analysis of the cost to place an order, they found that it was over $600 every time they placed an order. And that really surprised them. So they instantly made some changes. Anything they were buying, that was less than 2,500 US, they were not allowed to use a purchase order. It's when they developed purchase cards. If you needed to buy X, it was within your area of responsibility. It was less than 2,500 US. You used your purchase card. They only use purchase orders on anything above that amount to get a reasonable return. And that's one of the things we have to do in activity-based budgeting. Identify all the indirect activities. Monetize them. What does it actually cost to perform that service? Then, for every product and service we produce, how many of each of these different indirect services do we use, times the cost per each, for the total cost to produce anything we're selling? That way, there is no indirect cost. There is no lost cost. Everything, every cost we have, is associated with the product or service we sell. Now, to create this vast database that is accurate takes a long time, a lot of resources, and a lot of money. Because of this, the vast majority of organizations in the world, although they might like to use activity-based budgeting, have chosen not to. It literally takes 3 or 4 years and many, many millions of dollars to build, validate, and use this database. The Financial Times of London a few years ago did an analysis in surveying large organizations in a variety of industries around the world regarding budgeting and their use of activity-based budgeting. And they found that about 1 in 4 that had considered it was actually using activity-based budgeting. But the same percentage were talking about it, but it never moved forward. About the same percentage had started the process, but had abandoned it because it was too complicated. And about 25% had analyzed the risk versus the reward, the investment of resources versus what they gain, and decided it wasn't for them. Most organizations in the world are never going to use activity-based budgeting. But if you're associated with some of the very large and largest organizations in the world that have chosen to invest the resources to develop your activity-based budgeting, your activity-based costing as part of your activity-based management, you'll find it's the most accurate form of budgeting around. We just have to be willing to commit the resources to achieve it. So in this module on forecasting and budgeting, we've covered the real relationships between forecasting and budgeting. We've talked about the 2 basic groupings of forecasts, both qualitative, which are judgment-based, and quantitative, which are numbers-based. We've talked about both the pros and cons of budgeting, why we should budget, and what are some of the challenges. We've looked at the traditional fixed budget. We've gone through an Excel model on a flexible budget. Again, if we have either price or quantity that simply can't be fixed as we move forward. We've looked at zero-based budgeting as the best tool for reducing waste and unnecessary costs. We've looked at rolling budgeting, which is a favorite of the sales organizations. And finally, we've wrapped up with the most complex, but perhaps the most valuable of all of the budgeting tools, which is activity-based budgeting. I hope in the 8 modules that we've covered with you on both Introduction to Accounting, on the financial statements, working capital, the basis of finance, our financial analysis, and now on forecasts and budgets, I hope we've covered all of the areas of finance and accounting that you really were looking for. And if you have any other questions, please definitely let us know. Until next time, this is Daniel Feynman saying thank you very much.
And again, Daniel, thank you so much for sharing those cutting-edge information with what you've been sharing. Is a complicated subject and make it so relatable and one without the county, how things work out. So really appreciate that a great deal.
You're very welcome.
Incredible. And with that said, Daniel mentioned you can reach out to us, on the provided means of communication in this site, and also through to help business owners like yourself. And again, thank you for investing in this program. We hope we have delivered in your expectation of what this program is all about. We wish you all the success, and to work with you maybe one-on-one. And again, Daniel does some amazing workshops around the country and the globe. And Daniel travels, so if you happen to know that there are people who need this sort of training, you can certainly get in touch with Daniel. Daniel, is it possible at this point to let people know the address where they can find you?
Absolutely. There's two ways to get a hold of me, Yukai. One would be just Daniel Fiman at builditbackwards.com. That's my direct email. Or you can always go to our website, which of course is www.builditbackwards.com.
Incredible. And we look forward to be speaking with you again very, very soon. Thank you, Daniel, and have an outstanding day today.
You too, Yukai. Thanks very much.
Bye for now.